So when should we automate our test cases? It's a great question, but there's a problem with that question. See, when we say we're automating test cases, we're kind of assuming that we've written the test cases first, we've done our manual testing, we've waited till the feature is stable, and then we start automating after the work is finished. And this is how a lot of teams work. It feels right, it's sequential, it looks good on paper, gives you a nice warm fuzzy feeling, easy to sell to management, but it turns out that this is a really low value, low impact form of automation. Because the key to high value automation, to actually getting the most bang for your buck in your automation process, is to automate the requirements, the acceptance criteria themselves, not the test cases that happen quite late on in the process. Because when you do that, you can get your automation, or at least the bulk of it, happening as part of your development process. Because you don't want a separate phase for development and testing and test automation, because that's what slows things down. That's where testing gets squeezed off to the end of the picture and the automation ends up never happening. Now, making this work is harder than a traditional approach, but it is much more high value. It's harder because it means thinking about what you can automate early, think about how you can work with developers to make it happen. But there are a few tricks I can give you. So when do you actually do automation? It actually depends on the type of requirement that you have. See, if you have a requirement that's, say, API driven or even a service layer, you can totally automate that before your coding starts, because you're going to need to define a contract of some kind. And if you haven't, well, that's your first step. So you can automate that before the coding starts. If you've got a more UI-centric requirement, then you'll probably want to automate it as you do the development, or a little bit shortly afterwards. Now, with tools like Cypress and React and Playwright, all of these modern tools make it much easier to get that job done during the development phase. And if your requirement describes an end-to-end user journey that spans multiple services or multiple components, then you have a few options. But you'll probably want some kind of running services to test against. So you'll typically flesh these steps out a little bit later on in the process, even if you define them early on. But the good thing is, if you're using the approach I've described, you can leverage your API level tests to make this automation go a lot faster. So remember, if a test is worth doing, if a test is worth automating, it's worth being part of your definition of done. So don't think in terms of automating test cases. Think about automating your requirements.